I am so excited to welcome one of my most favorite humans, Lyssa Mandel, to the podcast. Lyssa is a fabulous multi-hyphenate writer, comedian, somatic therapist in training, which we'll dive deep into, using tarot, astrology, and myth to deepen our understanding of human evolution. Thank you so much for being here, Lyssa.
Thank you for having me. I love hanging out with you.
I know, it's the best. Fun fact, Lyssa and I started a podcast at the very beginning of the pandemic.
I still have those recordings on my computer.
That would be interesting and perhaps cringy to listen to.
Maybe cringe. I mean, yeah, but you got to embrace the cringe.
Always. That's my mom was saying that. My mom's like very into Instagram now, and I remember one of my friends that she follows posted something on embracing the cringe, and I said something. She's like, "Liana, you have to embrace the cringe."
Karen said that?
Karen said that. And I was like, so true. So true. She also taught me, Riz, the kids are saying.
I've heard of Riz. I like this. I'm into Riz. Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, Liana, you mean Riz?" And I'm like, "What?"
So your mom is Gen Z.
She is. My mom's Gen Z, and she's cooler than I am. But she always has been. She'll tell you that. I would love to start talking a little bit about your journey. And I love that. Well, you know what? There are two things. There are two big reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you, besides just loving talking to you, because I think you're so smart and fascinating. Is that I'm seeing two trends, and you are embodying both of them. One, a lot of women, a lot of the smart, accomplished women I know in their 30s, in their 40s, starting to pivot career-wise and really like embracing new chapters, and whether that's starting new businesses or going back to school. And I find that I'm empowering a lot of women in that direction, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, with so many of my clients, they have been in talk therapy. They have regular therapists, and they're still really disconnected from their bodies. They still quite don't know how to process and sit with emotions. They can intellectualize how they feel or why they feel a certain way, but they can't, they're sometimes really shy away from processing how they feel. So I would love to dive deep into both of those, but give us a little backstory on you. Tell us where you came from. Where did all this come from?
That's so funny, because like a little backstory, and I'm going to do my best to like hone in, because I feel like, I'm 40 and I've lived just as many lives. Too. Yeah. Yes. Listen, I'm not hiding from it. I think it's a beautiful thing. It means more wisdom, but
I agree. I've been listening to, have you listened to Julia Louis-Dreyfus' new podcast where she speaks to older women?
No, but I love her.
Oh, it's so good. I've only listened to, she did Jane Fonda, and then I listened to her episode with Diane von Furstenberg, and Diane von Furstenberg is like such a queen. And she's like,
yeah,
we don't ask people how old they are. We ask them how many years they've lived.
Oh, yes.
And I was
thank you.
She's like, I love aging because it means I get to keep living, and I love being alive. And I was like, hell yes.
Yeah. I love that. Julia Louis-Dreyfus on Veep is like one of my favorite performances of all time on TV. Truly.
She's so incredible. She's so funny. And did you see that movie that she just did with Jonah Hill also?
No.
And the movie itself is not that great, but it's about like interracial couples. But she plays the cringiest mom, and it's so bad and so uncomfortable, and she nails it. She's brilliant. She is.
And I grew up watching Elaine, for sure.
I mean, same. The Elaine dance.
Yes.
What's better than that? Well, at the end, you must listen to this podcast. It's so good. At the end of it, she calls her mom and tells her mom what she learned in every episode. It's really cute.
Oh my God.
Cute.
Yes. Great. So I'm an aspiring Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Oh, girl, you're nailing it already. Don't be aspiring. Just not a lot of people know about it. You're funny as hell.
Oh, thank you. We went to the same alma mater, which is Northwestern. But when I went there, I took myself very seriously. So this is, okay, the zoomed out story arc of my life is like a very Benjamin Button thing. I think, because I was a 65-year-old woman when I was 8. Like, I was everything was extremely serious. It's like I was in touch with a depth of feeling that I knew about since I was really little, but it was always sort of, blown off because people were like, oh, it's just, hormones, you're just a teenager, whatever. But it hasn't gone away. And it turns out that depth of emotion informed like everything else that I've done in my life. But I took myself really seriously. I wanted to be, the editor-in-chief of the New Yorker / a famous actor. I had big plans, and basically the course of my adulthood has been a process of like painful humbling, like falling down one step at a time and just getting like each bruise is more wisdom, but it's sort of like this grand fall from grace that has meant being more truthful to myself, but also realizing that I'm not that special in a way that, in a way that's actually healthy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
So, but when I was in college, I was like, I'm doing like, a lot of Shakespeare, a lot of, Tom Stoppard shit, like, sorry, can I swear on this podcast?
Of course. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure I already have. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Fuck it all up.
Yeah. And then, I went and I worked for Labyrinth Theater Company doing marketing and development for them right after school, but I was not very happy. And then I will thank the financial crisis of 2008 for making me lose my job, which forced me to reevaluate everything. And that was the beginning of my Saturn return, which we can talk about at another time, but like, pushed me toward the thing that I really wanted to be doing, which was not working in an office, So like I went from working in an office to being a cater waiter, going back to acting conservatory, and getting closer and closer to like the nugget of the thing that like really felt good. So,
oh yeah, you went to Maggie, right?
I went to Maggie Flanagan.
Oh,
yes, I did.
Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
Oh, I taught at Maggie Flanagan, nutrition for actors.
Right,
I don't think I talked about it on this podcast before, but yeah. So I have such a soft spot for Maggie Flanagan, and for Charlie.
I mean, changed my life. That was where I started doing this movement work. That it was Lloyd Williamson created this technique that was for actors, like designed to get actors in their bodies to be more open and vulnerable, so that emotion could flow through for the purpose of acting. But when I took that class, so that was 2 years long. And then I trained to teach it for another couple of years. It was about more than acting for me. Like it was a really spiritual experience. And I saw my classmates releasing all kinds of emotion that it seemed like magic to me, because it's like, where is this coming from? And that took me down the rabbit hole of, learning how tension in the body is unprocessed experience. But like, pause on that, because then I took a little detour for 12 years into comedy.
I didn't realize that you taught that. I remember talking to you about how that training was life-changing and how Maggie was life-changing, but I didn't realize you were teaching that.
I didn't actually ever teach it. I'm trained to teach it, but because of red tape, a combination of red tape and, how do I explain? Like, it was a very limited program. There weren't really opportunities to teach it. And my immediate teacher, not Lloyd himself, but my immediate teacher turned out to be not really happy to be training any proteges. Yeah. Okay. So I went away from it for a while, and when I went, and then it was like improv. I went through all 5 levels of the pit. I was on a bunch of teams, and then I started doing stand-up, and then I did my talk show, The Bitch Seat, which is a talk show about, about childhood, basically. Yeah. And all of these,
she would read her journals. She would have guests on. She would read her childhood journals. They would write. One of my favorite. I've been a couple of times live, and one of my very favorites, and I don't even remember why you did it, but you were naked from the waist up, and you were completely painted in like, was it like candy, or it was like colorful, and
it was Stranger Things. So
okay.
So the bitch seat basically began because I was a prolific journaler when I was like, a kid, and I got to experience reading at Mortified, which is the show where people read from their stuff, and it was so amazing that I was like, I want to give this experience to other people too. So it was a live talk show that became a podcast that we did in New York and in LA for like 5 years, where my co-host and partner Phil and I would welcome guests on to share some artifact from their youth, whether something they wrote or made or something that meant something to them. And then we would do an interview about childhood. The idea being that our inner children, the ones who did not get their needs met, the ones who, never really were heard or understood, are still inside of us. Still wanting to get those needs met, which shows up in the form of, us being, triggered, or us having certain behaviors in our adult life. I didn't realize I was doing this when I was doing this show, but it was really healing to me because little Lyssa, 14-year-old Lyssa, felt so intensely about things, and she really wanted to be seen. And I gave her the platform to be seen, So, and each time I would read like a poem that she wrote or a journal entry and get this loving, supportive feedback from the audience, I was healing her bit by bit. And so I wanted to give that opportunity to other people as well, because even people who are the most confident in the world, on stage, comedians or actors or whatever, we would have people on stage who don't get embarrassed of anything. Having this moment where they're about to share something they've never shared with anybody from when they were little, and going, oh my gosh, I'm nervous. And I'm like, yes, that's the sweet spot right there. Because being able to, it's basically like live therapy. It's like public therapy. And so I did that for 5 years. And then I was just taking a break to write, and then the pandemic happened, and that basically, it was a time of like everything up until that point was like draining out of the hourglass. It just felt like I was at this major point of like emptying out everything and assessing everything, and it was in like the depths of this time, which was like, as you know, a really dark night of the soul. From like December 2020 to like August 2021, where I was like, I have no idea what I am now or what is next. But there are some little crumbs that I can follow. Namely this thing about, I had finally heard about somatic experiencing, like in 2020. And
do you want to explain what that is for people who don't know?
Well, I'm not training in somatic experiencing. I'm training to be a somatic therapist. Somatic experiencing is a very specific brand founded by Dr. Peter Levine. But basically, somatic therapy is therapy having to do with the soma, or the body. The idea being that Bessel van der Kolk, this like famous psychologist, wrote "The Body Keeps the Score." And the polyvagal theory, which is about, the nervous system, basically saying that like any deep healing that we do needs to touch into a deeper part of us than what our conscious mind can do. So it's about getting below the conscious mind into the body, into the nervous system, and letting the body speak, letting the messages emerge from that deeper place that, in the Western world, we're not trained to do, because we're trained to think that the mind and body are separate entities. Eastern world has known that it's all one for thousands of years, but
No, I mean, I feel like that's the basis of what I do, is get people just tapping into anything they feel below their neck. Like, everyone comes to me just neck up. I'm ahead. I don't listen to this. I don't pay attention. So many people are just not inhabiting their body at all. Therefore, their health suffers, their life suffers, their relationship suffers because they don't know how to A, listen to themselves, B, trust themselves, and C, really decipher the messages they're getting.
Right. Well, a lot of people are like, we have been very well programmed to not even know that there are messages to get from there, you know, and I am number one in this. Like, I was a skeptic, you know, like I was not a very spiritual person. I was raised Jewish, but I never like felt a connection to that idea of God. It was all intellectual. And I come from from intellectual parents who stressed the importance of, you know, good grades and like working hard and everything. But there was just no idea even that there was actual intelligence in the body, or like if I heard about it, it sounded hokey, right? Yeah. And this is actually perfectly timed that we're talking about this because the New York Times just put out their therapy issue of the magazine like this week. And so like 2 days ago, there was a huge article about somatic therapy, which is amazing because I think that I can speak about like my parents, for instance, my dad specifically, no fault of his own, but like he can't really understand the value of something unless like, you know, it's been proven by like reputable, credentialed, prestigious, whatever. So until this article came out, like I know it was pretty unclear to him, like, what is my daughter doing? She's embarking on another woo-woo weird fantasy life thing.
Yep.
But now that it's in the Times, you know, it's like, oh, now I can have a conversation about it. So like, what I hope to do is work with clients who are like me, skeptic, what I would used to be a skeptic, who are skeptics, who believe that we can intellectualize or analyze our way out of anything, and realize that even though we can't fully explain it yet, like there is healing in real time to be had when you drop below that level. And I learned in school, which I'm in the Soma Soul program at the Levin Institute, which is in Western Massachusetts, but the program's on Zoom. Oh my gosh, I just lost my thought. You don't have to edit this out, Claire. This is real time.
We haven't been editing anything out, so don't even worry.
That intellectualizing our feelings is actually a way of avoiding actually being with our wound. Just like watching TV or going shopping or taking a nap or any addictive behavior.
Right. Smoking, drinking, eating sugar.
They're all ways of avoiding being with the wound. And
I mean, that makes total sense. Yep. That makes total sense. And it was funny because I have this trauma healer that I work with, and it's all it's very somatic. He has his own, you know, way of doing things. And I saw him yesterday for the first time in a year, and I just was like sobbing. And at one point I was like, but it doesn't make sense. And I shouldn't do it. And he's like, stop, stay with it. Don't go there. Nope. You're getting out of the experience. And that was exactly right. Like intellectual, that's such a really cool, clear way of putting it. Right. Because again, I mean, I came from a similar background, right? Where like, education was very highly valued. I grew up in the East Coast, an only child, mostly around very like hyper liberal, overly educated, like elitist liberals.
Yeah.
And like your brain was, they sat around and talked about ideas, right? No one's talking about how they feel. And the idea of being able to understand it and talk about it, intellectualize it, like people celebrate that, right? But God forbid you like sit there and feel it and you open up and you're vulnerable and you're messy and you're a problem.
Right. Right. And I don't think it's always bad to analyze. I mean, I have been in talk therapy on and off, my entire life. I mean,
there's a lot of value. Absolutely.
There's value, but then I think there's a ceiling to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You reach a point where you have uncovered so much stuff, and you can, contextualize yourself in the world, which is good. but the feelings are still there, or like you don't feel like you've changed. And that's because there's a limit to how far you can go until you tap into the unconscious. And I think I was talking to you about this recently. No, you told me this concept of the no, it wasn't you. Sorry.
But
this concept of the body is the unconscious.
Yes.
We were the way we hold ourselves, the way we wear and how we carry weight, and our posture, or the pains in are all
the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, when I got into what I was like, when I had my healing journey, when I got very sick, and like I was no different. I did therapy for all my 20s. And I just remember like later in my 20s getting a new therapist and her wanting to like relive all my childhood stuff. And I'm like, I'll cry as much as you want about this, but like, I'm not mad anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I understand this. Like, why are we like making these grooves deeper? Like, what do I do next? Right?
Yes.
I get it. What do I do next?
Exactly. And did I tell you, I mean, I probably told you at some point that the therapist that I had in my mid-20s, I was with her for like 4 years. I always felt like she was judging me. She was not the right fit for me, but I didn't know, because I was like, oh, she's a therapist. She's like 20 or 30 years older than I am. She knows more. So I'm going to listen to her. That's what it was always about, like farming out the wisdom to other people, authority figures around me. But that's what we were taught to do, right? That we don't know any better. And the last appointment I had with her, this was like at the end of my acting conservatory. My friend Michelle had recommended A New Earth to me, this book by Eckhart Tolle, right? The sequel to
Power of Now.
Power of Now. Yeah. No, Be Here Now is Ram Dass. The Power of Now. And you know, in A New Earth, it talks about it gives you tools to get present, which was something that I had literally never done by the time I was, 26, 27 years old. And I bring in this book and I'm like, this is really amazing. And she's like, oh, books like that are just another crutch. And I'm like, but this is giving me tools to help me like now, day to day. It's same like what you said. I don't want to dig these grooves any deeper. And she was totally dismissive. And I walked out of her office and never came back. Because she couldn't.
She was threatened by that. Like, that's not how she sees the world.
Well, there's some gatekeeping there, right? Like, oh, only certain people with certain, credentials, academic credentials, really have the power to fix you, which is actually not true. Like, the most power we have to fix ourselves. So, okay. Sorry, I just
It's us.
It's us. And it's not to say we can do it in a vacuum, because I do think that wounds happen in connection and need to be healed in connection.
Yes.
But what I'm learning, but what I'm learning in therapy school right now is that it's actually so much simpler than we think, that what people need and what their unhealed inner child needs is just to be met exactly where they are. Is just to have space held, is just to be heard. And it feels so simple. It doesn't require 20-page term papers. It doesn't require like 7,000-page books to read. Do you know what I mean? It's so simple. And I
want to interject for 1 second, only in the sense that my training, right, that I had becoming a health coach, which I was not good. I thought health coach, what the hell is that? That doesn't sound like a real job. Like, whatever. I was looking into so many other, like becoming a nutritionist or dietitian or something, but no one was looking at how the mind-body connection, how that was connected, right? Because that was my big thing. And I remember I ended up in this program because they actually acknowledged like how our bodies are connected and how nutrition affects our brain and all those, like how we think and feel as well, right? That we aren't just these brains and our body's not this separate thing. But what they would always say, because so much of it, it was like a nutrition program and a coaching program. People heal themselves by themselves when given the opportunity. Your job is to create a space and help them find that opportunity. And so much of that is holding space, meeting them where they are, asking questions, right? And it was like, okay, if they're doing these things that are making them feel sick, like give them these directives, right? But also like my whole training was, everyone is unique and different. They know what they need. You're there to help them, guide them to them. so they can heal.
Exactly. It's guiding, it's holding space for someone and guiding them to the inner therapist inside of them. You know? And yes, like
that's the only one that knows. You're the only one that knows what you need. You're the only one that knows.
Right. And but because we're so disconnected from ourselves, we don't even know that we know. You know what I mean? It requires slowing way down and getting very quiet. And again, these are things that are devalued in our late stage capitalist society, and we're not ever taught to. And so I like to think of somatic therapy as couples therapy, but the couple is you and your body, and I'm helping you talk to each other. Yeah.
I love that so much. I love that. And it goes so well with what I do, right? Because people, I think that, I've seen the longer I've been in this space that everyone's issues with their food in their bodies, like 99.9% of them, is a disconnection from themselves.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, okay, you're leaning into sugar or caffeine or alcohol or whatever it is, or your gut issues. This is stress. This is you not listening. This is your body's cry for help.
Yeah.
How can we get quiet and listen?
Right.
And then the thing is though, right? Because it's one thing to get people to sit down, which is hard, so hard, and be quiet. And then you get them there. And then the trust piece is really hard, like that muscle.
Yes.
And I feel like this is what I've like dedicated my life to doing and helping other people do. I still struggle with the trust piece, right? Like the further outside of your comfort zone, like what we were talking about when we were voice noting a week or two ago, where it was like, all I want to do is like slow down and be, like my crazy New York achievement drive and all of this stuff that I've had for like the last 20 years feels ready to fall away. And I'm fucking terrified and I don't want to trust it. I feel like I'm doing things wrong, right? It's like that trust piece is the biggest key for people.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a lifelong thing to work on that trust, right? Because when we were formed, and like calcified when, between the ages of like 0 and 7, like that's where all our programming began. So it's going to take a long time to unwind that. And it's going to be 2 steps forward and 1 step back in terms of the trust. And even people who have been doing this for years and years and years, when they become the client and they get in the chair with the therapist, it's like some days it's hot. Some days you can't, your body won't let you. It's just like, no, I need to be protected today. I need to be armored up today. And it's like, can we be patient? We can't just strong arm our way into that trust process. It's about softening and being patient and recognizing there are days when our body is going to be like, nope, I can't open today, and be like, okay, I respect that, try again tomorrow. Yeah, I just have so much heart for people who can't trust, because it's like us against the world, against this whole system. And I don't have to get on my conspiratorial soapbox, but it is, I think, right now, a rebellious act to recognize when we need to slow down and to not do and to not do. To be more than to do is a rebellious act, because like the quote unquote powers that be, the large corporations that function on consistent growth and productivity, they don't benefit from us slowing down. Do you know what I mean?
No one benefits from you like slowing down. There's a part of you like just being satisfied, right? Like being and experiencing and, trusting yourself and not needing to fix, right?
Yep.
To be at peace or to be content. No one's making money off that.
Exactly.
No one's making money. No one's going to get anything from you. And it's been so interesting. And I feel like the pandemic did this for a lot of us, right? And I feel it really strongly. And it was funny because, I have I'm like a Joe Dispenza nerd, and have such, especially last year, like went really, really deep into a lot of meditative practices through his work. And so much of what I was doing was sitting in the feelings of peace and contentment and satisfaction. And really wiring my body and my brain to recognize those instead of striving, right? And like really calming my nervous system down. And it's been so interesting being here and starting to feel those things and fully panicking.
Yeah.
Because, and then feeling like, oh my God, did I totally fuck my life up? Because now I'm just satisfied. I don't need to strive to do things. I don't need anything. And I'm just like completely happy myself. Like, what is
Well,
this?
and that is the mind coming in, you know, that's
Yeah.
the ego saying
Yeah.
like, oh no, you don't need me as much. I better like cause a huge, you know, what is the word? Oh my gosh, it's too early
Problem?
for me. No, I was going to say
I know, I'm
conniption, but
sorry.
it's not conniption. Yeah. I felt like that when I went to LA, and you know, LA is a much slower tempo place than New York, and
Yeah.
I had like all of my layers of anxiety were just like falling away,
Mm-hmm.
and my mind freaked out and got anxious about not being anxious, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I have this conversation a lot. Actually, it was I have this one, actually, she was a Maggie student of mine
Mhm.
in her early 20s. And then we reconnected during the pandemic, and she's been with me for years. So I've
Ah,
watched this girl grow up in her 20s,
amazing.
like start in her early 20s. She's now close to 30. And it's been the biggest gift to empower this woman. And it makes me, I keep thinking about like, what can I do with like women of that age group? Because it's been amazing. Because she is now, she trusts herself so much. Her anxiety is gone. She has created this incredible life for herself where she's doing exactly what she wants. And it was like, oh my, like the stuff I would have dreamed of in my 20s
Yeah.
if I wasn't like a complete, and it's been really beautiful. And we had this session this week where she was like, I have everything I want. Everything is good. But there's this 10% of me that's like freaking out because like there's no problem. And I've like gotten there. And I was like, this is what happens,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm experiencing this too. Like I always feel like we all have this ceiling, right? Like we're our comfort zone of our personality and the whatever like we're emotionally addicted to that we identify as us is this small box coming that
Mhm.
you know came from trauma and whatever our childhood. And as you continue to work on yourself and grow, what I see people doing and I experience it's like you hit your ceiling for happiness and joy and you bump up against it and all of a sudden you're uncomfortable because you're like I've never been this peaceful or satisfied or happy, like oh my God, like I have to create, your brain's like we have to create problems
Exactly.
because this is uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Where it's like no, this is your new normal. How do we practice like expanding that capacity for love and joy?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it does create like the creating problems where there are none. The you know, thinking the other shoe's going to drop, thinking this is too good to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Those are
Mm-hmm.
all trauma responses. Old trauma responses. You know, that might even be intergenerational. You know, because
Yeah.
we carry in our DNA. Well, you know all of this. You know, it gets passed down through generations. So, for instance, you know, I am an Eastern European Jew, descended from Jews who have been, you know, fleeing their homelands for thousands of years. So my DNA is a composite of all of theirs, and so that is deeply in there. And so it's not a matter of like pushing that voice away or like squashing that voice. It's a matter of like making space for that voice, that fear, saying, "Hey, fear, like you can be at the table too. What do you need?" But not letting it drive the bus, you know?
Yeah.
Which is an Elizabeth Gilbert thing, I think.
Yeah. You're in it's not allowed to drive or touch the radio.
Right.
The fear can be in the car, but it's got to like sit in the backseat.
Yeah.
I love that. I always talk to my clients. I'm like, okay, with uncomfortable emotions, and this is basically the stuff I did with my trauma healer. Instead of, right, our knee-jerk reaction is always like, how do we numb? How do we avoid? How do we push down? Like, I don't want to feel this, right? That's like humans.
Right.
And he would just sit there and be like, now welcome it in.
Yeah.
How can you amplify this feeling? How can you breathe it in and welcome it in? So I always tell people, and like Pema Chodron has some really like welcoming the unwelcome. I love that book where she just talks about like, really invite it in and give it a space and tell like you can stay as long as you want and I love you and I'm here for you, like to this whatever this uncomfortable emotion is. And that welcoming usually for me allows it to pass through, and then it isn't there forever. But when we reject it, it stays inside for such a long time.
Well, this is the thing, and this is why, I think of emotions are like water, which is something that Maggie Flanagan always used to say as well, and like it goes hand in hand with these ancient, ideas of, of the elements, which is like, in the tarot, the cups is the suit of the water element. It's the suit of emotions, and if we let emotions exist the way they want to, they come and then pass through like a wave. You can't hold on to the wave, or you can, but then you're going to turn it into like a dense material that's like going to stick uncomfortably in your body. So letting it pass through, but also to what you said about Pema, one of the core principles in my therapy school work, we talk about the ABCs, right? You can do the ABCs for any uncomfortable feeling in your body. Awareness of what's in your body and acknowledging that it's there. B, to befriend it, right? To sit next to it by the campfire. And C, curiosity and compassion.
I love this. What a beautiful tool.
I know, and anybody can use it. That's the thing. Like, does not need to be behind a locked gate, You can use that at any time in your day, and it requires you to tune into like subtlety, It might not be like screaming at you. There are some days when you can ask into it, like what brings you here or what do you need, and you can't hear anything, and that's okay. But you can always make space for it to just be there. And sometimes you need reminders, from a support to be like, even the other day, my friend Audrey, who also does a lot of this work, I was having a really shitty day last Wednesday. It was just one of these days where everything feels crunchy and I'm like underwater and I'm angry at everybody and I'm so uncomfortable. And Audrey's like, I mean, this is the work. Can you just be with this feeling? And just having a person outside of me reflecting back to me, right, stimulates our mirror neurons. Made me realize that even I, who does this work all the time, was trying to not feel the feeling. And I just needed that little supportive reminder. No, it's okay. You can actually feel that feeling. And actually, if you let yourself feel it, it will move through more swiftly.
Yes. And that's like one of the practices I've had for a while lately is like, how do I love what's in front of me, no matter what it is? And how do I trust that it's the right thing, right? No matter how uncomfortable it is or how shitty. And I've been really tested recently because all of a sudden I am feeling differently than I've ever felt. And it feels scary. And, making myself wrong and spiraling about it. And then coming back to, okay, if I trust that, everything that's coming up for me is got the lesson is the thing that's for me. How can I accept that this new way of being or this new experience of me or how I experience life is the right thing, which again, like goes back to the trust thing, which is so challenging, but when you can get there, incredibly rewarding.
Oh yeah. And it's hard. It's hard.
It is hard.
But I'm curious, when you talk about this new feeling, is this what you were referring to before about this feeling of like not feeling ambitious, of wanting to? Yeah. Which, we were talking about the other day. I started to feel that like in 2017 when I left New York to go to LA. It was this very clear feeling of stepping off the hamster wheel, because I had been we had met each other in New York. I had been there for over 10 years, spinning all these plates, pursuing acting and comedy and having 4 different jobs and just like running myself ragged because that was what you had to do, to play the game.
And that's what everyone was doing. You were almost like getting sucked into it, even if you didn't want to.
Right. But I had enough stores of like ambition and drive from when I was a sad little kid, that I ran on those fumes up until 2017 when I got to California. And like, I remember one of the first times that we visited, Phil and I went to Venice Beach. And when you get to Venice Beach, and you see the ocean just open in front of you, there's this like yellow diamond shaped sign that just says end on it, which is like like
Yep.
and I was like, oh no, like I think I accidentally retired early. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? Like
That's how I'm feeling.
yeah. So cue an existential crisis that continued to unfold from 2017 until like pretty much last year, when I was like, I can't drum up that ambition. Like, there's no way I can find that drive again. And my inner child is angry at me because I gave up. Although I didn't. It's just like I ran out of juice, and I can't manufacture juice when I used to be able to. I can't make myself do anything that my body says no to anymore. And it's inconvenient.
Oh my God, me neither. Oh my God, me neither. Yeah. It's like, it's so funny to watch. I'm like, no, just can't. Like I should, maybe can't. It's so funny. I am, oh, this is gonna be like vulnerability share for me a little bit.
I got you.
So I'm in this new relationship, and it is not at all what I pictured for me at all ever in my life. And it was so funny because the first couple months of it, which still is in that essentially, was me just being like, no, we can't do this. I'm not going to do this. We're not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm not. And then it's like, nope, we're still doing this. We're still doing this. I'm going to keep going and going to keep going. And at a certain point, I was like, okay, my brain is just going to have to fuck entirely off.
Yeah.
Because I'm not listening to it. And I'm just going to trust. And this is funny too, because so much of my work is I really teach people. I'm like, and Martha Beck, I got this from Martha Beck, who I absolutely adore, talks about like, you could use one part of your nervous system to make decisions, or your entire nervous system, right? Like your brain is just this one tiny part, right?
Yeah.
So I'm always talking to clients about that. And in the work I do, it's like, listen to your body, trust your body, listen to your body, trust your body. I'm at the point where like, I'm all body, barely any brain.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm doing these things where I'm like, my brain is like, what the, no. This makes no sense. And my body's like, shh, I got this.
Yes. I mean,
and it can be very disarming.
Yeah. And let me be the first to admit that like I did not listen to my body in a huge way a couple of years ago. And the consequences were so dire, I almost did not live, like when I, moved back to New York at the beginning of the pandemic, which I was already, long story short, I'd been long distance, with Phil for a year. That did not go well. I really wanted to stay in California, but didn't because it's important for me to maintain this relationship, which now we've been together for 11 years.
He's the best.
He is the best.
I love you.
Oh, he is the best. But he did not like LA. It was not for him, and it was very much for me, and I knew that. And like in the days leading up to moving back into the city, back into Astoria, I remember being in my car, like driving around in late afternoon and hearing this very strong, visceral message. I know what I have to do. And what I had to do was go back to California. Like that was the future for me. And I
remember this turmoil.
I didn't do it.
I remember this.
I didn't do it. And the first day that I moved back in, like I was subletting in Astoria in this tiny little room that had a window that faced a stone wall. And that was what caused my absolute nervous system collapse. I mean, and it sent me into a place of suicidality, of I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I lost 25 pounds, the whole thing, then I started a blog about that and like doing ketamine therapy to heal my way out of it because I needed a strong reset. But even now, Liana, I'm like, how am I going to say to people, listening to your body is number one, when I didn't do it? But I didn't do it, and the consequences were truly dire. I wanted to be dead because, so do as I say, not as I do, listeners.
Well, no, people have to be really uncomfortable to change.
Yeah.
really, really uncomfortable. And that's what, unfortunately, that's where you needed to get. And I always tell people, because I'm not in the business of being like, eat this, don't eat that, do this, don't do
Right.
that. I'm like, here are the options.
Right.
What do you want to do?
Right.
And even I was in my group this past weekend, and one of my clients was leaning more into, she likes to numb out with alcohol occasionally when things aren't going well. And who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
And she was like, I'm not ready to give it up. And I was like, all right, you're just not uncomfortable enough. Like, go drink a whole bunch of drinks.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like you're going to change when you want to. I'm here to hold up a mirror and to give you tools
Right.
and to show you
Right.
what you're doing. But, you know, there's a whole period of time, I talk about this a lot, where you know better, but you're not doing better yet because you're not uncomfortable enough, or you just haven't built that muscle, right? Those new habits.
Right.
And that's okay. That's part of being human.
Well, totally.
And if anything, that makes you so much more relatable and better as a therapist than someone who had no experience with that.
I mean, true. That's true. I was also like, you know, my inner victimizer voice was coming down on me hard, being like, you're a hypocrite. You know, you want to be like Liz Gilbert or Glennon Doyle and do the brave thing, and you didn't do the brave thing. You stayed here for a man and blah, 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 whatever. But like, it was the thing that I had to do to learn that way. And
Yeah.
I wanted to mention this thing about, you know, if you have something that you're doing that's a habit that is helping you like avoid hard things, avoid change, avoid the wound, whatever. In Soma Soul therapy, this modality that I'm learning, we talk about the layers of like the layers of oh my gosh, human. Wow. Well, I failed. It's basically like an. I just can't remember the name that he calls it because it's based on a Gestalt thing. That's the layers.
Yeah,
of like
we'll
human
find it in the
personality.
show notes.
But it's like an onion, right? We are like an onion, and the outer layer is this role layer, which is you know the behaviors and the costumes that we had to put on when we were really little in order to get our needs met, right? And we still role layer is something that we can easily slip into or out of, but it is a way of it's not fully authentic. And just below the role layer is what we call the impasse layer, and the impasse layer is these behaviors that help us avoid feeling the wound, and that includes, you know, drinking or drugs. It includes, you know, numbing out, dissociating, whatever it is that we're doing to avoid the thing that we want to be with, intellectualizing, right? Over worrying, procrastinating. And like within the first couple of weeks of school, our mentors were like, you know, what percentage do you think we are in impasse, you know, during our lives? They're like 80% of the time. Like a huge amount of the time, we are not sitting with that wound because we can't, you know, we can't tolerate it. So like have so much heart for the part of you that is just trying to survive and feel better, you know? And, but it is frustrating because the more we become aware of ourselves and our, you know, habits, it gets, the more frustrating it is when it's like, I literally am watching myself go into this antique store and wasting 3 hours looking for treasures when I need to be doing this other thing. I'm watching myself doing it and I cannot stop. So can I like not?
But eventually you can.
Yeah.
Right? You know, you'll get so uncomfortable where, you know, you will start doing better. This reminds me so much. And I'm sure I've told this story before. I mean, maybe not on here, but when I was in the depths of, was very bulimic, and I had like a lot, you know, it was funny. It was more like in my brain almost though. Like I had years where I was off and on when I was much younger, but I remember always being like, this is not a great way to cope, but my brain was consumed by like my body and food, and it was all I thought about. And it was like hard to make space for anything else. Felt completely insane. And I remember one summer, I don't remember what year of college. It was like in between some year in college. And I was at my grandma's house, and I like had just the urge to go to Barnes and Noble, and I love a bookstore. So
of course,
it wasn't that strange, but I was like, I need to go. And this is way before, like, cause I grew up like you, I like grew up in a very science-based household, like not spiritual, not religious, not anything. And it's interesting what the healing journey will open you up to. Right. So I remember I go, and I am not sure why I'm there, but I feel incredibly pulled towards, and this is maybe my first experiment or my first, experience with the self-help section,
yep.
which became a good friend of mine for many years. But I remember just being really pulled towards the back of the store and then plopping down on the floor, just in this random spot where I felt very pulled to sit down. And this book, like essentially like jumping into my lap off the shelf. And it was called, I believe it's called like Eating Under the Light of the Moon. And it was like a holistic eating disorder book.
Yeah.
And in it, I remember, and I tell this a lot in my group still, and it had this profound impact on me. And I talked about, imagine you are at a riverbank and it is a rushing river and it's churning and it's deep and you fall in and you are drowning and you are just doing everything you can to swim and to try to not die. And you finally grab a hold of this log and you hold on to it for dear life. And it brings you safety and it brings you to this much shallower part of the river where you can stand up and get out. But instead of just climbing out of the river, you pull the log with you because it saved your life.
Oh.
And then you start dragging this big, heavy log around because it saved your life. And they're like, that was your eating disorder, right? Like, or whatever it is, your alcoholism, your sex, whatever, your shopping, whatever
your
like,
survival mechanisms.
That saved you at one moment.
Yep.
So don't make it wrong. Don't judge
Yep.
it. This thing saved your life. Know when to put it down. So we always talk about in my group, like just, and you only know when you're ready, right? And what I do and what you do, it's what you will be doing is giving people tools just to give them an alternative to carrying around this big, heavy log.
Right. I love this visual. This
Isn't that
amazing.
Beautiful?
Yes,
Isn't it beautiful? Please have it. It's one of my favorite things because it's like just put down the log. This thing was a beautiful, natural thing that saved your life. It was the best you could, and just try to put it down.
I love it, and to know that in the future, if you have this need to like hold it once in a while, like. Give yourself some grace when in the moments that you need that. It did serve you. Like, can you be grateful to this log? You can be grateful to the log without having it take up space in your closet.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
absolutely.
I love that.
I want to ask a question. This is a little bit of a pivot, but we sort of touched on this earlier for you. Because towards the end, I love giving tools, and you've given so many already. But with people, because again, I get so many people disconnected from their bodies. They don't even understand what that means. And I don't even realize it, right? Because of acting. And I think we get drawn because as a child, I'm highly sensitive, because of the nature of my childhood, I was really good at like dissociating and like going to space. And I don't think it's not lost on me that I became an actor and then an improviser. Like
improviser, yeah.
I got into improv, an improviser. And, I was looking for ways to process emotions and to learn how to be present and to connect, right? Like, and that was what I was really drawn to. Yeah. And I get a lot of people who I don't even realize it, right? Because we've done all this work. Right. I get people who don't even understand what being present is. Right. Or how to practice it, right? So do you have any tips, tools, ways to become more present when you find that you are someone who dissociates a lot?
I mean, it feels so basic to say, but I cannot overstate the effectiveness of closing your eyes wherever you are, feeling your sits bones, getting in touch with like the sensory, like feeling your skin, touching your clothes, feeling the air, and then doing a gentle body scan. And so Yoga Nidra, I think, is really, really useful. If you go on, there's this app called Insight Timer, where there are thousands of free meditations of all different kinds. That was a real saving grace for me in a dark time. But like practicing, giving your mind a rest, and noticing the places in your body where there is any sensation at all, whether it's tension or tingling or a heaviness or whatever, and just practicing, like not attaching any feelings to it, necessarily like emotions to it, but just noticing the sensory, noticing that you have a body. And there could be times when it's, you can't feel it. Like there are times when I try to tune into my heart space and I literally cannot physically feel it. and the numbness is also a message, So I, I know it seems so freaking basic, but like the thing that really set me on this path was the movement work that I did at Maggie Flanagan's, where every class began with what they called 10 minutes in which to do nothing. Other people might think of this as Shavasana, but basically we would lie on our backs with our eyes closed and continually be guided back to our bodies as they're experiencing. Awareness of whatever's coming up, emotional or physical, and permission to let it be there. And literally, as your mind wanders or you fall asleep or you start to get nervous, whatever, can you be a good friend to yourself and bring yourself back to your body as it experiences? And if you practice this every day, even for 5 minutes, I swear it will change your life.
Oh, I love that so much. Whenever I had I had a great experience at my conservatory training at Atlantic, but I think I would have really, really liked to be a student at Maggie.
For
I
sure.
loved teaching there and everyone's experience and just how he really encouraged people to embrace how they felt and celebrate their bodies in a way where Atlantic was like, let's think about things harder, which I did not need. I did not need that.
The somatic stuff is like
beautiful.
Is the future.
Yeah. It does seem like we're going in that direction, and it does feel like people are becoming a bit more conscious and needing that. And for me, I think when I really, really got into a couple years ago, and it was also during the pandemic, because I was really just trying to look at my divorce and the pain around it and my part in it, and really just ready to face that, right? Like, what can I learn from this? And I started working with my trauma healer, and he had me welcoming and sitting with these things. And I just remember sitting in this space where I was just like, okay, this is not going to kill me. I guess I'm just going to allow these painful feelings to completely take over my entire body. And I am just going to allow them to shatter me into a million pieces. And I remember coming out, and this is where I find it fascinating too. We're like 10 years in therapy in New York, where I remember being in my early 20s, coming out, feeling, the 45 minutes was up. I felt like my guts were hanging out.
Yep.
It felt very dysregulated. I'd been crying and I'm completely dysregulated. It's not done. I don't know what to do with it. And immediately, like, either calling one of many ex-boyfriends to try to regulate, or like immediately buying a cookie and eating it before I even knew that I had bought it, right? Where it was like so many times spilling onto New York, the city streets, or just sobbing all the way home on the subway or something, where it was like, I had nothing. I had no tools.
Right.
Where this was the first time I would get off these calls and I would feel peace and I would feel like emotions were finished.
Yeah.
And then it was like all of a sudden, and all I can do is sort of like, it felt like I could only take up like this much space in the world, like a tiny amount, to like all of the space in the world that I wanted. And it was like the most power. I was like, this is where it is for all of us. Like, being able to sit with and face your most uncomfortable emotions and just be with them and accept them. Like, that's the most powerful you can do.
It is. And then you feel kind of invincible. And then you're like, oh wait, I'm immune to all these advertisements telling me what I need to buy to fix myself.
Right. Or I don't need to, like, I can eat cake when I want to and not when you know what I mean? I don't need cake to emotionally regulate, or I don't need cigarettes, or I don't need any of these things. And like, occasionally we will, and I tell people to do it consciously, but it's like, the more you have tools and you have an understanding and a trust of your, muscle, right? Your trust muscle around being able to process your emotions and sit with them, the less anything has power over you, right?
Exactly.
Like, you get to design your life, and you don't shy away from anything. You can just fucking go for it.
And you get to,
I think that's what I'm trying.
No, you get to eat cake because it's pleasurable, not because you need it to try to fill this hole. Yeah.
Yes. And then relationships are there only because they're pleasurable, and you guys can add value, not because they need to keep you safe. And, all of those, everything just gets to come into your life because you choose it, not because you need it to be whole.
Right.
Oh, I'm so excited about you in this work, in the world. I know you're going to change the world. I want to ask you one more question. And, you've kind of answered this time and time again, but if there's anything else, we always talk about, obviously this podcast is called Love Through It. And the whole idea is that, in life, there is always going to be shit that happens. We are guaranteed suffering, right? But it's our choice whether we suffer through it, those difficult times, or we love through them. And I would like to know, you've given us a lot of great tools already. Are there any other things that you do when you are handed a pile of shit and you're like, I'm not going to suffer through this. How do I love through this? Like, how do I regulate myself? How do I see the best in it? How do I find the lesson? How do I calm myself down? Any of those, anything that you haven't shared, and you've been a wealth of knowledge already, so you can pass if you want.
I'm not passing.
But
I can talk for 7 more hours.
I mean, I can as well. Claire's like, guys, no.
Whatever, Claire, you love it.
You love it. You love it, Claire.
Number 1, put on some music and fucking throw your body around. Okay, dancing.
Yes.
And I'm not dance like no one's watching. Who cares? It's really not about the external. It's about putting on music and letting your body move in the way that it wants to. And if somebody were to look at you from the outside, it might look ridiculous. Doesn't matter. Just like
Elaine dance. We're back to the Elaine
we're
dance.
back to the Elaine. You know what? Like, Elaine was the original somatic therapist. And the other thing I will say is my dear friend Cassie, who is a brilliant yoga teacher and breathwork teacher. And I met her when we were serving tables in Midtown, like 10 years ago. She was like this ray of sunshine, and I was like, I need a piece of that. And basically, when she is handed a pile of shit, she says to herself out loud, this is just the challenge I need. And like, maybe it's a little sarcastic, and maybe she says it through gritted teeth, but it's like, it is being handed to you so that you can grow. That's it. If you always assume everything is a lesson, it doesn't. Everything's for you. Even if it doesn't feel good, like feeling good and feeling bad are very subjective human ideas. Nature just is. So if you just say, this is just the challenge I need. I don't want it. I don't like it, but I do need it. Thank you. And go from there.
And I always tell people too, like, look back at some of the hardest things you've had to overcome and what they did for you. And for me, it was like getting sick and getting divorced were the hardest, scariest things that I've ever done, that were the most challenging, that I grew from the most, that created the most beauty and purpose and connection for so it's like, of course.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that so much. So are you taking people on practice? Like, where are you in your practice right now? Where can people find you? I know you do writing classes. How can people get more Lyssa in their lives?
Okay. So every other Tuesday, today is one of them. I facilitate the writing jacuzzi, which is a safe space, spontaneous writing session. You don't have to show up.
And what's spontaneous writing if people don't know?
Basically, I will give you a prompt, and you will have about 25 minutes to read the prompt, let it settle in you, and then free write without taking your pen off the page, without editing yourself. And it can be any medium. The idea being just like crack open your right brain before your left brain can have a say. And then
I love that.
Yeah. So that's every other Tuesday. Anything, if you want to find me for that or for tarot or for somatic things, I would say right now, go to my Instagram. I am at a flock of sandwiches.
Just the best.
It was the best idea I ever had. And
it really is.
I am in the process of revamping my website that includes offerings such as, writing, coaching, and editing, which I do freelance, tarot readings, and I will not be taking on paid clients until probably the fall, because right now I'm still working with practice clients. But be in touch with me. I'm always happy to informally answer questions.
Are you looking for more practice clients?
In a couple of months I will be, and the other people in my graduating class will also be looking for practice clients outside of our program, because right now we're practicing with classmates. So you can.
Well, that's great, because therapy is expensive and we can't all afford it. So that's like a beautiful resource. So watch that in your brain, people.
There will be some pro bono offerings available if you just want to try it out. So you can email me at lyssamandel@gmail.com. Liana, I imagine you'll put that in your notes.
Yes.
We will. And always, through my website, lyssamandel.com, or at a flock of sandwiches on Instagram.
That just makes me smile and happy every time I see it or like remember it or you say it out loud. Lyssa, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. I already want you to come back.
Oh, thank you.
So you have to be like a regular contributor.
I would
and
love
we can talk
to.
about all of that. Yeah, no, I think that it's funny. I had all these. Well, you know, I wanted to have a podcast since I was like 5,
Yeah.
and before they were invented. And when I thought about it, it was like I want experts, but I also want like recurring members of the cast.
Sure.
Or, you know what I mean, of the team who are on a journey, because I think it's really fascinating. I get really fascinated by listening or watching both people's progression and like how they grow and transform. And like you are someone who is so incredibly thoughtful and smart, and the way you approach your healing and evolution is, you know, so fascinating and beautiful to me.
Oh,
so
thank you.
I would love to have you back at some point. I just love talking to you.
I feel the same.
So thanks so much.
No, thank you. Sorry I interrupted so much.
Oh my God, so did I. That's what the point of this is. It's a conversation.
Yeah.
Interrupting's the point. All
All
right, I love you, girl. Thank you again.
You too. Thank you.